Good morning, everyone. This is Sebastiano Tofaletti, SME Safety. I'm happy to be here with you. We are just starting the 2020 SBS Forum on PPE and Textile Care. Without further ado, we are going to follow our agenda, which you all have received. I'd like to give the floor to Maitane Labaria, who is the director of SBS, the organization that is hosting this event. Maitane.
Good morning, Sebastiano, and good morning to all of you. It is really my pleasure to open this year's edition of our SBS Forum on Personal Protective Equipment, PPE and Textile Care, which, as you know, will be focusing on the circular economy. For those that might not know SBS, maybe to say that SBS, Small Business Standards, is the European association representing SME interests in European and international standardization. The aim of this forum is basically to offer a platform for discussion among European stakeholders, and also for the sharing of information on relevant standardization issues for SME in this field. We hope this is really an interesting event, and like in previous editions, we also hope that we will have a very lively discussion with our panelists, but of course as well with all of you. So as I said, this year's edition is dedicated to the circular economy. I think we all have realized that the COVID-19 pandemic, we also have seen an increase in the use of disposable masks, gloves, and other protective equipment. We also know that there was an unprecedented, and there still is, demand for PPE. And this has also showed us the importance to invest in the capacity of European PPE manufacturers, and of having a strong PPE sector to be able to keep the security and well-being of our citizens. But I think we also have seen, I guess I'm not the only one, in the street, or also when we have been on holidays, we have also seen in the media photos of, for example, divers picking up masks and gloves, littering the waters, for example, of the French Riviera. So I think this is also a wake-up call and a reminder that we also need to address the problem of plastic pollution, and that the use of disposable masks, for example, and other PPE products cannot be a sustainable long-term solution to address this and other future similar crises. So in the light of the European Commission Circular Economy Action Plan, also the objectives of the Green Deal, I think it is crucial we strive to increase the sustainability of our products and the solutions. Sustainability cannot be just something that we consider in the aftermath of a stressful period that we are all living. And it is important that we also look at the use of solutions that are also reusable solutions, that cannot only make a significant contribution from my point of view to achieving the EU Green Deal goals, but also to reinforce local supply chains and ensure the increased demands for PPE can also be met. That's why I think the topic of today is, I would say, cannot be more timely. There is a need to think about the long-term plans in relation to the PPE sector. And here we know standards also play a crucial role. They can help the quick placement in the market of PPE products, but also help to ensure that they are safe and they meet the essential safety and health requirements for the safety of workers and citizens. But in addition to this, they can also play an important role in helping to move to a more sustainable economy, to more sustainable business models when aspects such as reusability and reparability are considered in the development. So this is just to do a short introduction to the discussions of today. To discuss the topic, we have invited today I think very insightful speakers from the Commission, from the European standards bodies, environmental NGOs, and experts in the PPE and textile care sector. So I'm sure they will help us to outline a precise picture of the current situation and also contribute with the discussion to find answers. So I think, Sebastiano, that was all from my side. I will hand you now the floor, and just to repeat again, I'm very pleased to welcome you all today, and I really wish you a very interesting discussion, which I'm sure it will be.
Thank you very much, Maitane. We see you are at home because we are basically in Brussels pretty much in almost lockdown. So we all have to work from our home offices or even the room of our children sometimes.
Exactly.
No problem. We are all in the same situation, I believe. And let me kick off immediately the first panel. Let me also ask the speakers in the first panel to activate their cameras. While you do so, let me just say that the first, as you see, you have seen the agenda. So we will start with a more setting the scene discussion. We will hear from the European Commission and from SEN. What their points of view are in this conversation regarding the circular economy in Europe, especially for the PPEs and textile care sector. Of course, the conversation about the circular economy also in light of and the developments in light of the COVID crisis about strategic autonomy for Europe's supply chains, all this is a bit broader than the pure PPE and textile care sector. We all understand that, and we are. This sector is not in a silo. I mean, we are part of the economy and society. So we want to focus on this sector today, but we also don't want to forget, the larger context. And we want to say what this sector would like to do, especially the SMEs in this sector, because they have ideas, they have views of what should be done in terms of strategic autonomy and circular economy. The two of them are not in contradiction. They are perhaps, working together in this particular case. So without further ado, let me open the conversation with our two distinguished speakers. So first of all, we have Rostislav Barbarov from the European Commission. Rostislav is a legal officer in DG GROW, the Directorate General that deals especially with enterprises, and he is working in the unit that is in charge of PPE. So Rostislav is certainly in a good position to tell us a little bit more about the plans of the Commission. You also have been working, I believe, closely with Commissioner Breton, who in the last month was very active in trying to get the supplies of masks for our hospitals and health operators in Europe. He had a meeting with different manufacturers, including the president of SME Safety, Mr. Zani from company BLS. So I'm sure you are, in a very good position to tell us what the Commission thinks and what your plans are for, especially for the circular economy and standards, of course. So, Rostislav. I cannot hear you. Are you sure you're not muted? No, I can't hear you, Rodislav.
Hear me now? Hello.
Yes, very good.
Perfect.
Nice.
Great. I'm very happy.
Yeah, we all have to solve technical problems. We know this is normal.
Indeed. Apologies. These are indeed the let's say surprises of the new, or let's hope temporary way of functioning. But indeed, it's a pleasure to be part of this very interesting discussion this morning. Thank you very much for the invitation. And indeed, I look forward to an interesting discussion on this topic. Then I would actually try to share my screen. Hopefully this would work as well, and you could I could show you the presentation.
Yes, I think you can be, Rosanna can make you presenter. We were seeing your desktop.
Hello. Hello. I'm. Can you hear me again? I'm sorry. I don't think.
Yes. Okay. We can hear you.
And we see the presentation. You see the presentation now?
Yes, we see the screen, so you should open the right file. Okay, excellent. PPE sector.
Perfect indeed. So that's where we are today, and this is indeed a couple of supporting slides to kind of set the scene in the discussion. Apologies. So indeed, what has been, as you very well know, of course, the leitmotif, the main topic during the last months in 2020 was, of course, the challenges related to the COVID-19. As you were aware, and indeed was already highlighted, we have seen indeed a situation of extreme shortage of PPE, certain types of PPE on the market in Europe. And in this regard, we have identified several, let's say, contributing factors which have led to this situation. Of course, the main one being a very global supply chain for PPE products, which of course has then its own, brings its own challenges. So on the one hand side, indeed, we have seen, of course, a very exponential increase in demand in the beginning of the year, coming both from the healthcare sector, but also coming from the side of the general population, citizens, let's say, more unusual channels than the established channels for this kind of PPE. So of course, this increased demand on all channels and the quantities that were demanded, of course, very logically put certain strain on the supply chain. On the other hand side, there was simultaneously to this rather a stable supply, be it globally, be it European, on one hand side with certain restrictive measures in China. Also, at the beginning of March, a number of restrictive measures here in the EU. So indeed, this has also accentuated the shortages specifically in certain member states, certain regions. So that, let's say, the market of PPE at the beginning of the year, there were quite some distortions. On the other hand side, looking into the potential to increase the supply of PPE, so to increase the production, discussing with the various manufacturers, indeed we have identified that there was also certain constraints when it comes to the availability of raw material components, so which were in a way limiting the possibility to increase the supply. Then again, also there was, as mentioned already, with the certain restrictions in the EU, there were some practical distribution and logistics challenges to move already shipments of ready production from warehouses, distribution centers to the users, to the market, to those in need. And last but not least, of course, with all the lockdown measures, the restrictive measures in the member states, this has contributed to limiting further the capacity of conformity assessment bodies to test new products. So in a way, there was already, let's say, certain number of notified bodies which were capable of doing these tests. But of course, with the increased supplies, the new manufacturers coming on the market, this has also been identified as a rather bottleneck, a difficult situation, contributing to the global shortage on the market in this situation. So in order to address this, as you very well know, there was a number of various measures from the side of the EU across all sectors. So indeed, as rightly pointed out, they were not only PPE specific, but of course much broader: health, economy, borders and mobility, tourism and transport. So let's say a wide array of measures, some of which of general application, which were also relevant indeed for the PPE sector. And I would also touch upon, let's say, the more sector-specific response measures, which are some of which, of course, were very short-term, some of which are, let's say, more medium-term, and some which will transition into more long-term measures. So on the one hand side, as already mentioned, indeed, Commissioner Breton already in March has reached out to a number of industry representatives in order to have a better understanding of the situation of the supply chain in Europe, to understand indeed what's the capacity in Europe in terms of protective equipment, which is in high need. So indeed there was the very, let's say this was a kickoff of a more sustained supply mapping of the situation in Europe, which is something which was later on picked up by the Commission Clearinghouse, which is a specific entity within the Commission across DG, set up indeed for making sure that there is a match between the supply and demand. So the Clearinghouse was indeed in discussion both with industry representatives and member states in order to ensure this matching between the supply and demand. Also very early on, already in March, we have prepared and issued certain guidance documents for prospective manufacturers. So we understand that, of course, the PPE sector, there is a high number of small and medium companies which are active in this sector. And for some newcomers or prospective manufacturers looking to expand into different type of PPE production, they would, of course, benefit from certain indications as to how specific types of products, in this case, of course, face masks, are to be certified, what are the applicable essential requirements, what are the applicable standards. So indeed, these guidance documents were issued and have been constantly updated since. And this is, of course, kind of a line that we would continue further in order to, of course, enrich this guidance with further questions or comments that we've received during our discussions with stakeholders. Also worth mentioning is that colleagues from RTD side, they have been published several calls, a call for support for production, repurposing of production lines for PPE in order to create a certain, let's say, reserve capacity in terms of production when there is a surge in demand. Also a very important element, which was particularly, let's say, helpful in the early stages of the crisis, was indeed based on the very good collaboration with SEN, which together with the Commission identified certain critical standards for essential PPE, and SEN and its members have kindly agreed to make those standards freely available for download for newcomers, new prospective manufacturers. So indeed, there is a number of standards, I think around 14, both on the PPE side and medical devices side, which were made available, and I believe they are still available to download at the web pages of the individual SEN members. Another particular measure which was enacted in the beginning of March was indeed a recommendation on the fast-track conformity assessment procedures. As already mentioned, there was indeed identified a certain bottleneck at the level of the conformity assessment bodies due to the restrictive measures closing down some testing facilities or just the capacity as such. So in order to make sure that there is no delay of making available ready products to reach the market, to reach those who need the most, in this case it was specifically healthcare personnel, the Commission has indeed issued this recommendation 2020-403, which outlines 2 fast-track procedures, so allows to make the assessment to be made directly by the member states via their market surveillance authorities, and this equipment can be placed even though it's not, let's say, classical CE marking, it haven't completed the normal procedures, to be placed in certain restrictive circumstances at the availability for the healthcare workers in particular. Also, indeed, there has been strong and enhanced cooperation with international partners. As mentioned, the global character of the PPE supply chain implied that there is a need to work together with international partners where there is a significant production. And I'm thinking need of countries in Southeast Asia, where, for instance, to give an example, strong production of gloves in Malaysia and certain restrictive measures in Malaysia had particularly direct impact on the production line. So there was indeed very good collaboration and exchanges with the international partners in order to convey indeed the situation on the EU market and have, let's say, help tailor the measures to the extent where it would be also accommodating the concerns of the EU. Touching upon the distribution and transport of products, indeed, it's worth mentioning the green lanes, which were, let's say, of a general application, but of course they were relevant also for the PPE sector, because early March we could see a certain number of shipments being blocked at the market, the borders on certain member states because of national restrictive measures. So indeed, working together with the member states to better tailor those restrictive measures and establishing the green lanes help to fluidify the transport and the distribution in the EU, and to make sure that the products reach the destinations and those users that were in high demand at the moment. And indeed, talking about the national restrictive measures, is worth mentioning the establishment of a temporary export authorization scheme, which is no longer in force, but which indeed for a couple of months was set in place. So a EU-wide export authorization scheme, which helped indeed to ensure that PPE could circulate freely across the EU market, because indeed there were some let's say unilateral restrictive measures taken in the early days of March. So working together with the member states, we have indeed established this scheme, and this has also contributed to, let's say, restricting or at least reducing the acuteness of the shortage we were seeing at the moment. And I will finish off on these specific measures with, let's say, two more forward-looking measures, which are have, of course, had their roots in the crisis of March and April, but are also looking into the future and to how to prevent the situation from occurring again. There have been indeed a couple of initiatives. One is the rescue stockpiling mechanism, which is a stockpiling mechanism at EU level, allowing to create temporary stockpiles, which may be placed in one member state or several member states, but are for the use of the whole EU. And these stocks of protective equipment procured under the rescue mechanism can be deployed at a very short notice whenever there is a need identified in a particular member state or several member states. So already there have been several rounds of calls. I believe 2 rounds of procurement calls under this mechanism. So indeed, the stockpiles have already been in the process of being generated. And this, of course, is in complement to national stockpiling, which we are also aware that member states have strongly focused on. And another mechanism, which was quite successfully used in the early months of this year, was indeed the mechanism of the joint procurement procedure, where several member states, in this case, the case of PPE calls for joint procurement, I believe around 20, more than 20, almost the whole of the EU member states have put together their needs in terms of protective equipment, in terms of other medical devices and supplies. And indeed, the Commission has coordinated this joint procurement in a way to avoid, to help streamline the demand and avoid any competition, let's say, for the same supplies, and to assure indeed predictability also for the side of the manufacturers. So these procurement procedures have proven to be a good mechanism, and we believe that indeed, if there need be in the future, they might of course be used again. So this is pretty much in let's say outline of the main response measures that have been taken for the sector. You of course you can hereby see my contact details, so should you have any specific questions or need of particular assistance to understand better some of those measures, please do not hesitate to reach out, get in touch with me and my colleagues, and we'll be more than happy to help you and advise on these measures. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rostislav. I think it's good to see that you have a good overview and that the Commission is being active in different areas. So you were not certainly not quiet in the period. We'll open the floor later also for discussion with the audience and the other panelists, because we do have quite some SMEs, also manufacturers of PPE, and so they may themselves, perhaps want to express their point of view. What is their concrete experience in the market? If everything that was tried out as new measures by the Commission has worked, or if something could have been done differently, or if there are still issues to be solved, perhaps. But we'll go to that later. Let me then switch to the other. With a economy. So you are certainly in a good position to tell us a little bit what SEN and SENELEC are thinking in terms of development of new standards, or generally activities that can support the goals of a more circular economy for Europe.
Hello. Okay. First.
Yes. Sorry, Catherine. I think I was blocked. The floor is yours.
Okay. First, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let's start. So I will just very briefly, because I'm sure you all know that SEN and SELEC together with ETSI are the 3 European standardization organizations recognized under the EU law 1025/2012, and this makes these 3 organizations the only providers of voluntary European standards. As you may know, SEN and SELEC bring together 34 national standards bodies, 27 EU countries, plus UK, plus 3 EFTA countries, plus Serbia, plus North Macedonia, plus Turkey, in order to develop and adopt common standards that are applied across Europe and sometimes beyond. And we do not work in isolation, of course, because our aim is also to ensure that international standards developed by ISO and IEC are also adopted across Europe. It might be worth mentioning that SENELEC standards are market-driven, so it's a bottom-up approach, and are developed through a transparent, inclusive, and consensus-based process involving, of course, a wide range of stakeholders and experts from industry, of course, but also from consumer side, from environmental organization, from SMEs, from government, from academics, etc., etc. The idea is that in doing so, we ensure that the consumer protection and enhance the trust in the products and the service, and we also try to facilitate international trade. Now, regarding PPE, because this is why you are there today, the PPE is rather a huge sector for SEN and SENELEC, as it counts more than 10 technical committees dealing with various products. We have more than 500 PPE standards published, and our work is coordinated by what we call a sector forum. So we have the SENELEC PPE Sector Forum, which coordinates, as said, our activities, but also discussing the main challenge of the sectors in these days, etc. Regarding the link with the legislation, because it might be worth presenting that also to you, we have 180 references of standards cited under the PPE regulation. We have still 16 to be offered by the end of 2020. And we have more than 50 projects under development. And when I say those projects are those that we intend to offer for OJ citation. You might be also interested to know the status of our work regarding the standardization request, because as you may know, in order to offer references for citation in the OJ, we need a standardization request. Just for your info, I know it's not the debate of today, but might still be relevant in the further discussion during the day, that the standardization request received a positive vote from member states, which means that we will receive, SEN and SENEC will receive the official standardization request, so the EC implementing decision in the coming weeks, I guess. In this standardization request, you find a list of standards that needs to be developed in support of the PPE regulation. There is a date for publication, or for an end date, a deadline for the development of these standards, and there's also an expiry date in the PPE standardization request. And just for info, you might be interested to know that our experts in the technical committees are in favor of accepting the standardization request. Now, regarding circularity, what does it mean? I mean, for SENSEC, circularity for PPE, its material are recycled and injected back into the economy. It does also mean that the value of products and material is maintained as long as possible, but it does also concern waste management. And I will tell you why we are focusing on these three aspects in the next minutes. When we'll receive the question, but this is what we see as circularity for PPE. But you have to know that today there is no specific circular standard developed in the PPE field. Nevertheless, there is a huge exchange of information and awareness raising from our stakeholders, because indeed, as mentioned by Maitane at the beginning of the session, this is, let's say, a more and more important topic that needs to be tackled, and this is quite crucial for the future. So this is something that our members are discussing more and more, and maybe in the course of the discussion, I will give you some further info and thoughts about that. Now, regarding the SEN and SELEC actions during the COVID crisis, yes, indeed, SEN and SELEC were extremely active during the spring, and in response to the coronavirus outbreak, as said by Rotislav, SEN and SELEC replied to the urgent request from the European Commission and made a series of standards freely available, 21 standards in fact. Standards from the medical devices side, like respiratory devices, but also, and a lot I would say, the majority of standards for personal protective equipment, for instance, standards for medical masks, medical gloves, etc. And in fact, this exceptional decision, I should say, was motivated by the need to tackle the severe shortage of protective masks and medical equipments experienced, unfortunately, all around Europe during the spring. And the idea was really to facilitate the work of many companies which reconverted their production line to deliver tangible results quite quickly. You might be interested to know that all in all, the initiative of making free available standards, European standard, was well received. And you might be also very interested to know that among those standards that we made available for free, those standards were downloaded more than, bear with me, 345,000 of times. This is really huge for standards, and this is like the top of the download we ever had. So it's a really huge, really huge figure, which gives really a good insight of the importance of standards during these days. In addition to the free availability of some standards, we also created or established with our members what we call the COVID-19 Crisis Management Network. And the network task is really to coordinate and facilitate the dynamic exchanges between our members during this very critical period, and this in various areas. We also had some thematic webinar, really focusing on concrete issues, but not necessarily technical issues. It was also some, let's say, more horizontal issues like HR issues and so on. And really, the idea was to exchange best practices with our members. And we feel that was a good idea also to be close to our members. Then I will maybe finish with that in terms of actions during the COVID. In answer to a very urgent request from the European Commission to deliver European standards for community face coverings, In fact, we received this request in May, and the request was to develop something by mid-June. So that was really a very, very short time to develop a European deliverable, but nevertheless, the technical board decided to set up a workshop with the participation of 10 members, and the group managed to publish a CWA, which is a fast-track deliverable. So CWA 17553 on community face coverings, guide to minimum requirements, method of testing and use. That was published on the 17th of June, and which is also freely available for download on our website. And the idea of this document is to take the experience from our members, taking some, let's say, technical specification already developed by our members, and to build a European document. So the document is freely available. It is to be noted that it is not, that the CWA does not fall under the definition of a medical device, nor the definition of a PPE. And for the next steps, this CWA is going to be taken over by our Textile Technical Committee 248, the TC 248. And the idea is to transform this CWA into a technical specification. And the new work item will be launched very soon, or maybe it has been launched last week during the plenary meeting. So that was in terms of actions during let's say the COVID crisis. And I will maybe stop here so that we can discuss later on the other things and on sharing some ideas. Thank you, Sebastiano.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Yes, I think we should have a little bit of time to have a broader discussion also with the audience. The colleague and other moderator to session so that in time, so that we can have a few minutes of conversation with everyone. So I'd like to invite everyone among the panelists or in the audience, if they want to take the floor, to let me know. I would like to start maybe with a concrete question to Rostislav, something you didn't really mention in your presentation, but something that I heard from the speech of Ms. von der Leyen, President of the Commission. She did mention a new initiative which is called, I believe, product passports. So in like an ID passport for products, to make sure that they are tracked and they are kind of reused, etc. So it's in light of the circular economy objectives. I was wondering if you know anything about this new initiative, and especially because the Commission, I suppose, they will have to select which sectors will start this product passport will start from. And I personally think that maybe the PPE and textile care sector, especially for those PPE that can be reused, like garments, and they can be washed or reprocessed, it will be a good candidate to be one of the sectors that will start with this product passport. So Rostislav, do you know anything about this new? I suppose you know something about it.
Thank you very much indeed for this question. Indeed, as you rightly said, there is a number of measures, and this sector is particularly one of those measures that could have or potentially cover multiple sectors, and this is not the only such measure. So indeed, there is a quite intense discussions now currently among the different Commission services to see indeed to what extent PPE will be included in these measures. So for the moment, I cannot really tell you any more about this specific one for as far as PPE and textile care is concerned, but indeed there is one of the many horizontal topics which we are discussing.
All right.
But also I take note of the point you make, that you consider this as being a good candidate for a sector to be included in this measure.
Well, at least I think it's something that we will discuss also with different SME experts in the other two panels later, because realize is that there is a lot of interest among our SMEs in this concept of reusability, circularity of products. So, you know, perhaps we have an industry in Europe which can also help to make, you know, production more local and reused. So why not? If of course what the Commission will do is, you know, in line also with what the industry is already doing, because I don't think you want to reinvent the wheel. If the industry is already using certain standards for tracking the products, etc., you cannot just, you know, now change completely the system. But I think it's perhaps let me ask if anyone else, especially from the panels. Yes, Andrea.
Sebastiano,
sorry,
can I address the question? Just making myself heard. Hello, Rostislav. We've seen each other in the working groups already. I was wondering, you mentioned the topic of or the measure of the joint procurement. I think in this situation it was very understandable, and also the member states actually had a lot of actions regarding procurement of PPE and medical devices in that time. As an industry, I was often asked by our members, why does especially in Germany, the German state, but also I think the European Commission did not really focus on reusable PPE and medical devices during that time, because it was, for our members, I think it was quite obvious to see that we have the solutions here in Europe with products that are reusable, that are often repairable. I mean, this is still a discussion we can have later with our experts, but we haven't seen the Commission or the member states focusing on that topic and trying to see this opportunity which they have in that crisis times of procuring reusable and repairable PPE and medical devices. That would be something I was wondering, was that ever a question in the discussions during the crisis in the Commission?
Thank you, indeed, Andreas. It's indeed nice to see you virtually, at least. So indeed, this question, it's indeed a very relevant question, and indeed it was quite there were quite many discussions among the different Commission services involved in these measures. And what I can tell you is that there are several factors which came into play here. The main one being actually the needs expressed by the member states. So without being an expert and without necessarily having the direct contact with the health authorities in the member states, my understanding is that when it came to national medical protocols, a number of member states, if not most of the member states, seem to have medical protocols based essentially on single-use items. I guess this has something to do, of course, with clearly with the need to establish specific process for disinfection of the products, for their tracing, so to make sure that the same person would recover the product, or let's say there would be certain traceability, which I understand that in the case of the healthcare sector, it's not always, this process is not always established. So the joint procurement procedure in particular was relying on needs which were expressed from the member states. This being said, I would like to stress that when it comes to rescue stockpiling mechanism, the calls for the stockpiling mechanisms were by no means excluding or favoring one product type over the other. So under the rescue, even though I believe, let's say, procurement has already been going on with some single-use products, the formulation of the calls and the characteristics of the calls are not restricted to single-use ones. And last but not least, of course, in our discussions with the industry and the various stakeholders in the beginning of March, of course, we acknowledge that there is a very strong production of reusable PPE in Europe, But what we could see, was also expressed by the industry, is that when it comes to production capacity, this was rather limited in comparison to the single-use products. Also, possibility to ramp up this production appeared to be rather limited. So I think in this particular circumstances where the demand was exploding and exponentially growing, this was also a factor which has to be taken into account, to the fact that in the member states' needs, they focus on single-use products which were able to be more quickly produced. But of course, we are very much aware that the situation as such is not sustainable by all means. And we are also planning to, in the upcoming meeting of the PPE working group, which is scheduled for 13th of November, we have included a specific agenda point covering those aspects of sustainability, reusability, which we plan to make, let's say, rolling agenda point, in which, from our side, and also invite the commission, other members and other member states, other various members, to bring forward topics for discussion, to make sure that indeed reusable products are also, let's say, factored in, or the specific, let's say, specificities of these products are more taken into account in any future measure, be it at EU, be it at national level.
Thank you. Maybe just one further little question adding on that. When we talk about procurement, we often think of products to procure. When we think of circularity, we have to maybe change this way of thinking into procuring or writing tenders for service, let's say product as a service, or a service combined with the product. If you go for reusables, you cannot only go for the products, you have to also go for the reusability, and that would be a service. So I think there needs to be some rethinking of the procuring processes in Europe, in order to actually be able to implement these ideas of reusability, repairability, and reprocessability. So that I just wanted to add up on this, because we were only talking about procurement of single products. What we also need to look at, if we want to have this circularity, we need to look for the services.
Indeed, those aspects are also among those, let's say, more general measures taken into consideration at various Commission services. And again, as mentioned, we are also somehow, let's say, I wouldn't say, well, conditioned by the needs of the national member states and the national medical protocols. And as you know, the EU has very limited or restricted competence in this field. So we are already indeed engaged in discussions with the member states on this respect, and the competent Commission services have been doing so from the very beginning. So indeed, as you said, it's about indeed changing a certain approach towards the products, from acquiring just a product to acquiring a service. So indeed, these discussions are well underway. As far as we are concerned, indeed, we do see a need for having this discussion and further continuing it with the member states.
Yes, Andreas, if you are fine with this conversation, I mean, there are a couple of people who have also asked to ask questions. Let me also first ask one of the other panelists who's is particularly with regard to what Rodislav described. Otherwise, I have another couple of people who asked the floor. Andrea, would you like to say something, or would you like to speak later when your panel starts? Okay, I don't hear from Andrea. So let me go to Sabine Anton. Sorry, I cannot read your surname in the little box. You had a question about the stockpile. Sabine, would you have to say it loud, or shall I read it? I understand that my connection is a bit bad. Can you hear me well?
Now, yes.
Yes. Maybe let me get back to first Andreas Pasciani. If you can hear me, did you want to ask any question to Rostislav?
Well, I guess that not really question, but I think that during my presentation in a few minutes, I will touch a few of the points that were touched during his replies, even though for a very specific perspective.
Okay, Andrea, that's very good, because then we can take your question a bit later. And also, I don't hear from Sabine Anton, so again, I cannot read your surname because it's hidden. But if you want to take the floor, please do. And besides that, yeah, she was asking me to read it. She was just asking if to Rostislav, I believe, if the stockpile mechanism bears in mind
Oh, Sebastiano, we lost you.
Okay, can you?
Maybe should I read the question from?
Yes, please go ahead.
Does the stockpile mechanism bears in mind the maximum storage time which requires regular replacement? Was the question.
I would have to, of course, double check, let's say, the specifics with the colleagues running the responsible for the management of the mechanism, but I do believe that indeed the shelf life of the products is taken into consideration, and this mechanism would be managed in, let's say, a dynamic manner. So yes, I do believe this is, of course, factored in, because indeed there have been at least some evidence that maybe stockpiling at national level has not always been managed in such a dynamic way. So of course this is not the case. This is not the intention to have products which pass their shelf life while still being stockpiled.
I think Andrea, coming back to Andrea, because you wanted to have the floor. Andrea, do you want to ask something or place a question, or maybe I can, or can you unmute yourself, please? Andrea Rechtsteiner. Andrea Rechtsteiner had a question. Ah, there she is. We can't hear you. You
yes.
have to. Oh yes, now.
Hello, everybody. I just wanted to say to you that the EU GPP criteria, the Green Public Procurement criteria, include the service already. So that was a statement to your question to Rostislav. I wanted to say that. That's all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. But I guess in practice it didn't really work in the crisis times. As Rostislav already said, it was not easy in that time. But maybe we can sort of have the idea of lessons learned from the crisis, that should be changed in future procurement, because the next crisis will come for sure. Rostislav, what do you think?
Absolutely, when it comes indeed to lessons learned, this is very much the topic of our work at the moment, because even though we see a certain, let's say, stability at the market, currently we know this is a very temporary, potentially temporary situation, and the situation can evolve very dynamically. So indeed, both at the side of our colleagues responsible for medical devices, as well as from our side, we are indeed looking to make sure that we take stock of what happened already in the beginning of the year, and to make sure that future measures taken, be it very short term or medium term measures, are avoiding, let's say, let's say the situation, try to contribute to moving past the difficulties we have experienced at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, I think we lost Sebastiano for this moment.
Yes, I don't know if you can still hear me, Andreas.
Yeah, now I can hear you.
No, I mean,
the moderator
Andreas,
is back.
Unfortunately, my line is not stable. So Andreas, please continue the excellent job you're doing. I don't know how long we can go on because we had foreseen to quit at 9:50. So I mean, you can take a few other questions, perhaps. Up to you, really, Andreas.
I think we should take some questions because there will some coming up. I think the next one was Valeria Botta. She wanted to address a question to Catherine. Valeria, are you with us?
Yes, it worked. Good. Yes, good morning, everybody, and thank you very much for both presentation. I mean, I was quite taken aback by the number that you gave with indeed how many times it has been downloaded, the free standard that you have provided. And as there is indeed the urgency of homemade mask, the standard that covers indeed a face mask covers only disposable products and doesn't take into account any reusable, washable solution. And as indeed, I also heard from Madame Olabari at the beginning that indeed as SBS, you are looking into less plastic and trying to get to a green take on these things. I was wondering, is there any initiative from the Sensenelec side to amend that or to add part to the standard that also suggests how to use the disposable, the reusable, washable products? Thank you very much.
Thank you for the
Thank you, Valeria.
For the nice question, Valeria. So just to come back on the face mask, on what we call, in fact, community face coverings document that we have developed, it's for washable mask. It's not for it's for reusable mask. In fact, it was based on an AFNOR technical specification on a tissue, or I don't know how to say, on a tissue face mask. So it was for reusable use. So we base ourselves on the AFNOR proposal, but in fact, there were also other proposals coming from other of our members, so we managed to have something. Now, the next step is the following. So the CWA will be taken over by our CEN Technical Committee 248, Textile. They will start from the CWA on face covering, let's say, which is for adult and not for children below a certain age, and they will do a technical specification. It will be much more, let's say, a real standardization work. And we were also invited by DG Justice to consider other things than the normal mask. We were also invited to consider some mask with transparent plastic for impaired people, hearing impaired people. We were also considering of building things for children. So this is not for single-use masks. So, and we do take that very seriously, the reusable aspects, because of course we cannot work with single-use. This is not in our policy. This is not in our strategy. So this is for, let's say, reusable mask. Hope this replies to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine. That was very helpful. I think there is not only this standard should be looked at in the future times in learning from the crisis, what we learned about PPE, medical devices, and reusability and circular aspects. And I think the other main aspect which we will have to focus as a lessons learned from the crisis is to and it was already mentioned, to make Europe more independent on these products, which are essential for crisis situations. And that brings us to the next session: secure local supply chains with reusable PPE. We have foreseen a break of 10 minutes, but I guess when I look at the time, the break time is already over. And I hope everybody will be fine if we just start with the second session already. Because if we don't, that would bring us to a delay, quite a big delay in our program. So I will, and Sebastiano already asked me to take over the moderation because he has connection problems. And I was foreseen as a moderator for the second session anyway. So I think we will just start with the second session. For those who don't know me yet, my name is Andreas Schumacher. I'm the Managing Director of the German Textile Care Association for already 7 years now. And I'm also a board member of the Small Business Standard, SBS. We heard Maitane, the Managing Director, already in the beginning. And for the next 2 sessions, we will have opening statements from experts in the field of standards and PPE and textile care of each 5 to 10 minutes. At the end of each short presentation, I will give you, the audience, the opportunity to ask questions. You can place them already in the chat if you want to. And I would now, the topics of the first session are all around the local supply chains. We see already one of the panelists on the screen. The session will concentrate on how to strengthen the supply chain and the lessons learned from COVID times. And I welcome as our first speaker, Daniel Darkowski. He's a consultant for international projects in DTV, also managing director of regional associations in the textile care industry. And he has been working for the industry for more than 6 years now, contributes to policy papers already on a European level. And he has a master's degree in political science with a focus on economy. And we like to hear from you, Daniel, on how to strengthen the use of reusable products. I will give you the floor, Daniel.
Thank you, Andreas, and thanks everyone else for joining. Can you see my screen for my presentation?
Yes, we can.
And yeah, thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak about the textile services industry perspective on the current PPE supply situation and what our take is on how to strengthen the reusable PPE supply within Europe. I think we already heard quite a few times, so I will just quickly go through this slide I prepared. As you are all well aware, we faced an unprecedented demand for PPE in a wide range of sectors across Europe. And at the same time, we saw a lack of supply for various reasons. One were the interruptions of international supply chains because of lockdowns in production facilities across the world, but also because of closed borders within Europe, where textile products, for example, couldn't be delivered on time. And at the same time, we also faced, or we saw that there were no backups, local backups within Europe for the reusable or single-use PPE products. And even for the cases where textile service providers, for example, had developed medical face masks that were reusable, single-use products were still preferred in a lot of cases and even demanded by demanded in some tenders by authorities and governments. And what came even on top of that, and this is less related to standards and procurement, but I still want to mention it, is the fact that our industry, meaning textile services as well as safety equipment manufacturers, were not uniformly considered a strategic asset within Europe. And our companies faced limited supply with disinfection materials, for example, because of that. And the supply of firefighters, police, as well as the healthcare sector in general with PPE was therefore unnecessarily risk in our opinion. We faced these difficulties even though we have a decades-old business model and well-tried processes. And what a lot of people don't really understand is that textile PPE is also intended essentially for a one-time use, but that instead of throwing PPE away after the use, we hygienically reprocess it in comparison to single-use products. And we treat or reprocess this PPE in a circular process, and in doing so, we not only take care of the reprocessing, but also the sourcing of textiles, for example, and the logistics behind the scenes, and also the repairing and replacing of damaged textiles, for example. And in doing so, our industry actually saves a lot of energy and resources in comparison to single-use products. You can see the numbers here in my slide. And this is actually quite a sad situation, because we offer, or we could offer products to help in the PPE supply situation, but there are a lot of hurdles or obstacles in our course, and in our opinion, there are various reasons for that, why reusable PPE are not used more often. First of all, there certainly is a lack of knowledge about the services our industry provides. But apart from that, I mean, this is more like an image topic. But apart from that, also standardization and procurement practices make it even more hard to promote reusable PPE solutions. Because what we are facing is a delay of standardization requests for the medical device regulation, for example, also until recently for the PPE regulation, and also the lack of harmonized standards makes it very hard to bring new and innovative products onto the market, because the test methods are not standardized yet, and this makes it very expensive, especially for SMEs, to place their products onto the market. In addition to that, there's also a lack of technical standards for the product design, meaning there are standards missing for the repair, reuse, refurbishment, and recycling aspects, and those are indispensable for the circular, if you really take it honest with a circular economy. And if these aspects would be included in more standards, this would certainly help to close this gap in the PPE supply. And textile products, for example, at the moment are placed on the market and they cannot be laundered or reprocessed thoroughly in some cases. And some standards, I think it was already mentioned, are exclusively designed for single-use products. The standard I mentioned here is for the medical face masks, for example. And the GPP criteria were already mentioned. We know they exist, but we realized in practice they are not widely used, in fact. And the governments, local authorities, as well as hospitals, mainly focused on the prices for products and services, and all the hidden costs due to the limited lifespan of single-use products were not really taken into account, and the environmental costs, of course, also not. And this is something, there is these GPP criteria exist in theory, but they are not put into practice, and that's something we are confronted with, and which makes it very hard for our industry to really essentially help Europe and the governments to tackle this COVID crisis. Thank you very much, and I'm open for questions.
I would support that. You can place questions after the presentations or during the presentations as well, with the speakers, with the panelists. At the moment, I can't see that there are any questions, but as I said, we are still open to your questions. But then if there is not at the moment, I would like to invite our next panelist, our next speaker, to take the floor. I give you a little bit of information about Andrea Spaziani. He is the area manager of Spaziani Group. He's working and a member of SME Safety. Spaziani is SBA is a manufacturer of breathing protection devices for many years. He is also president, and that is quite interesting for us also to know, because he knows about both sides. He's the president of Nueva Cibol, which has been manufacturing disposable masks for 30 years. He joined the company in 2009, and now he manages the group that has a strong focus in Europe, as I heard, and the industrial supply of PPE. He also has an experience with public tenders as well as private users. So Andrea Spaziani, we see you on the screen. I hope we hear you as well. Happy to have you here, and I would like to give the floor to you, Andrea.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think that I will try to be very brief, even though during this morning everybody touched a topic that is very dear to me. My focus is really I would like to walk you into what we believe was the situation before the crisis, and that should help us delineating what was wrong and what we can do to amend those problems. Very similar to what we heard about the textile industry, the PPE industry has been regarded in Europe as something that is not crucial, is not strategic. And the result of this general opinion and political decision is what we saw at the beginning of the year. And to be true, we are still seeing, because the situation with the second wave, as they call it, is not much better. I'll try to walk you through this. So at the end, I will touch on reusability for what my specific business concerns. So what I'm referring to is always about breathing protection devices as a PPE, because this is exactly where I come from as a manufacturer. So I know that some of these points can apply to other businesses. I think about gloves, for instance, or goggles that have seen very much the same problems when we talk about technical demands. The problem of disposable masks and breathing protection in general is that the impact was not only on professional levels, so hospitals in this case, but also on the public. So I believe that the reasons of the shortages of supplies are really much economical reasons. Before the crisis, and maybe also now, the disposable masks and the low-hand PPE were considered products that could be given to low value economies. So over the years, all the production of these kind of products has been diverted completely to the Far East. The reason is again economical, because the PPE that we're talking about are very cheap PPE. They require initial investments and then a high cost of labor. If you think about PPE, especially disposable mask, very often is more the cost of packing the product than the cost of producing the product itself. And then you have a serious investments at the beginning, the investments for the machines, the investments for the certification, but then you can produce it very easily in not very developed countries. This over the years has created a market in Europe that is fully based on import. Yes, we have some local producer on which we rely now. We have some important manufacturer. We all know 3M, for instance, or Honeywell, that obviously are major producer. They are helping the crisis right now, but the overall sector has been moved by importer. Which is absolutely good. Don't get me wrong. So long as the continent doesn't have a crisis. The moment in which you have the crisis, we can find, and we have seen it, all the weakness of this approach, because this means that the products have not been considered strategic. The production has been moved away, and the demand, that is what makes companies like mine invest in the industry, is very limited, because disposable masks are normally used only by the industrial users, are never used by general government or by medical by the medical industry. If you look at the consumption of these products before the massive crisis of 2020, the numbers of disposable masks purchased by hospitals is ridiculous. It wouldn't allow a company to invest on a single machine. That means there was not the economical interest for different manufacturers to really invest into the industry. Building to this, there is also a political and social reason, meaning that those kind of products have been sold and distributed mainly on prices. Up to 2019, the only issue for disposable mask of any time was the price point. Yes, in some instances you had the quality or you had the brand. We go back to 3M, as we said, but normally speaking, the price was the only driven on the market. This approach obviously is a very limited approach if we think, as we think now, that these kind of products are crucial for the well-being of the whole continent. Based on that, if we want seriously to create a local industry that can help Europe to sustain crisis in the future, and we have to remember that COVID is a massive crisis, but overall it could have been worse, because we've seen on the news even worse situation around the globe. There is the need to create an economical infrastructure that allows companies to invest in Europe, an economic environment which can sustain the manufacturing cost and responsibility of companies in Europe. To do that, many countries around the globe have done something similar, but the key is to sustain the demand, so that companies, not public companies, not the governmental companies, but small companies like ours, have the opportunity of creating the offer that can sustain the crisis. What is happening right now is that the vast majority of the demand of disposable mask, I'm thinking about FFP2, also 1 if you want, 1, 2, and 3, are provided either from major international company, mainly American companies, or from the import from the Far East. This leaves Europe in an extremely weak position. And to sustain that, again, I believe that the most relevant thing to do is to create a demand that is not incentive per se because 2020 was a difficult year, but because it's sustainable on the medium term, because companies will invest if this structure is there, not only for VC, because there is a political attention, but is a strategic objective over the medium term. This means that when we talk about public tender, we talk about purchasing these kind of products, there must be a consideration of the supply chain behind the goods. So where the product is produced, where does the raw material come from, what standard is applied. The standard aspect, I think, is very important. When the PPE standard started, there was the early 90s. Europe has made a major effort in creating a market based on standard, and nowadays we are one of the strongest, along with the American NIOSH approach on the globe. We have the strongest market in PPE that created very capable companies within the company. They have know-how and they know how to produce products that work. This has been a major achievement that I understand from a political point of view, but not from a manufacturing point of view, has been really damaged during this crisis, because the urge and the need of having disposable masks in the market open completely the gate to everything in the market. We are talking about homemade masks that are used in public transport with the same approach as a chirurgical mask or FFP. This, from a manufacturing point of view and from the point of view of somebody that has the opportunity of knowing how a mask works and what is effective and what is not, is absolutely crazy. Is understandable from a point of view of political giving to everybody something, because we didn't have enough, but at the same time we allowed to break the positive cycle that we created in 30 years of investments in protecting our standards. We have million and million of KN95 in the market that in most scenario don't even comply to an FFP1 in European standard. I think that this is an aspect that has to be considered very carefully, because if we want businesses, European businesses, that comply to rules and they want rules to work in a fair economic environment, we want them to invest, we want them to grow and to sustain the crisis strategically in the future. The compliance to the standard and the fact that what we import from wherever is met to our standards is crucial. And now with the situation that we have been creating and we are still creating, is damaging a lot the market. Finally, because I know that I'm running a bit too late, I wanna touch on the topic of reusable and what I said in this slide, consider PPE for the application. We noticed during the crisis at the beginning of the year, but also now, to be fair, that there is a big gap of knowledge between sectors that should be close, but they are not that close. In particular, the PPE sector and the medical sector, even though they're supposed to be close in some aspect, show they major difference. What happens in the PPE industry, which I think is something that should be learned and passed through different aspects of the usage of things like this, is that there is a very important focus on risk assessment. So the risk analysis is always at the base of the selection of a PPE. What happened in the medical industry is that the OMS on its guidelines has said that FFP2 was the minimum required protection for health and care workers, and that which is absolutely correct, has been taken from the majority of the decision maker as a starting and finish point. The idea is that technically, from a PPE perspective, the viruses in general, they are spread through aerosol. So every single PPE that is able to, in breathing protection, I mean, that is able to stop aerosol is a PPE that can be used to protect workers in general, health and care workers, as well as not only doctors, but we think about hospital in general, about public officer and so on, from the virus. FFP2, which is the minimum barrier, is by definition a disposable mask. Now, in some scenario, as somebody before me already expressed very well, it is impossible to think of using a reusable product because the logistic and the complexity and the risk of handling the PPE is simply too high. We believe that there are not that many the areas of usage of FFP2 where this applies. There are a very big chunk of the usage of disposable mask where the risk of managing the disinfection is not that high. And in those scenarios, we should allow the authorities to analyze the risk and divide in terms of availability who must absolutely have disposable product and who can afford to use reusable. During the presentation before, it was said that there is also a question of production capability because you can produce many masks during the day, during one day, while you cannot produce that many reusable masks at the same time. Obviously, this is true. The FFP specifically are produced on automatic lines, and they produce thousands and thousands per day. At the same time, one single worker can use the FFP for only one shift. Now, if you indulge with me on the next slide, this is a easy comparison between not only usage but also cost effective of a reusable mask. This is one of the simplest products that we have, but I'm talking about my company, but also the industry, because the industry can see these products throughout a vast variety of actual application to the standard. As you can see, one mask can last up to 6 months with 2 filters, and the mask can be then washed and can use up to 10 years. While
Andrea, can I remind you of the time, because we're very
sorry.
much over the time. Sorry about that.
Well, no, you're right. I just finished showing this this slide because I think it's self-explanatory where we want to go. I can add other things on the material that was touched, but I let you go on with the presentations.
Oh, sorry, but you can discuss in the discussion section later on if you have any further points to add. So you are finished now, and yeah. Okay, thank you, Andrea. That was quite interesting also to hear, not only from the textile side but also from the mask side. I think you touched quite a lot of interesting topics, especially when it comes to the supply of PPE, which is the topic here. So thank you for that. We go on with our next presentation, and our next panelist, which is who is Sven Schöpper. He comes from the textile services part of our industry, and he is an expert for textile services in healthcare institutions. He is educated as a textile reprocessing specialist and has been with the industry throughout this whole career. His business and industry activities span from developing reusable medical devices such as surgical draping and gowning systems, as well as designing integrated and qualified textile services. He participates in many European and international standardization working groups for non-active medical devices, quality and hygiene management systems, and he is also an SBS expert for ISO TC 94 SC 13 Working Group 6, protective clothing against hazardous biological agents. and he's also a member of the Senate Advisory Group for Healthcare Standards, as well as a member of the Medical Device Coordination Group of the EU Commission. So Sven, I hope that introduction was enough for you. Would you please take the floor and give your presentation?
Thank you very much, Andreas. Does everyone see the presentation, the first slide of the presentation, or what do you see actually on your screens? Hello?
Yeah, we can see the presentation. I just wanted to add one point. I've seen that some people have raised their hands. I will try to give them the floor, or will give them the floor after your presentation, Sven. So to all of you, to the audience, please bear with us. We have noted all the people that raised their hands, and you will get your voice heard after Sven's presentation. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No, thank you very much, Andreas, again. And as always in panels like that, most of what I have sketched here has already been said. So I'm going to rush rather through it to come to the conclusions, or to what this presentation is about, what lessons are there to be learned. But please let me first have a quick look back into the so-called crisis situation. The lesson number one we should have taking out of the situation is always expect the unexpected. Because what I'm wondering about is there is a lot of risk management and process management systems in place at a lot of companies and a lot of public organizations, but no one expected the wave that COVID-19 caused and the impact on stock and supply management. Everyone is talking about these process managements, but all of the professionals that were responsible for doing the stock management and the risk management said, okay, like Andrea already said, these articles like surgical masks are penny articles, so we have to take them to countries, or we have to purchase them from countries where the high labor account is able to be bared and to result in an only small price. And also, a lot of the professionals said you have to use a new product every time, and that is not a reused or fully refurbished product. Because there was a high demand of products and only limited supply, a lot of shady business people came to the scene, and I personally have been involved in some quality check for products from all over the world that of course did not fulfill the safety and performance requirements. And if you look at RAPEX, the European Product Safety portal these days, still roughly 30% of the purchased products do not fulfill the safety and performance requirements, although they claim to have a valid certification, and the belief in certificates has been shaken severely. Of course, public procurement organizations, they experienced, I call it the buyer's grief, how to rake an empty forest. The market was empty, so everyone was willing to pay extraordinary prices for the limited amount of products they could get their hands on. What we learned from that situation is, and what we have seen, as Daniel already talked about it, circular economy is present, but circular economy needs a voice and it needs visibility. That is what companies and associations are fighting very hard for. But circular economy also needs processes and communication. So you have to do the good and you have to talk about it. Manufacturers of reusable products, my company doing the same thing, we wanted to join in and help with the production of reusable surgical masks, and we had to acquire special approvals by, let's say, the Federal Institute for Drugs and Medical Devices in Germany to get special approvals for our medical mouth and nose masks to claim the performance and safety requirements. But when we wanted to sell these products to organizations, we experienced that reusable and circular solutions were widely unknown and ignored in purchasing processes. Daniel informed us about that as well. But far more important, the customer organizations, the users, they these days limited their processes to when it comes to returning goods, when it comes to returning used goods for refurbishing, it's nearly limited to mineral water bottles and raw textiles, which Textile Service is pretty active in. But they do not have the processes for returning goods they have thrown away after one use during the last 10 years, 20 years, and 30 years. So they need to build up these processes as well, and the public and their organizations have to give them time and resources for that. Lesson number 3, we need to have proper preparation to prevent another poor performance, supply performance during the next stage of a crisis. The manufacturers of and providers of reusable and circular economy products need long-term market perspectives. Andrea told us about that, because their business models are long-term, and their business models are not compared to a single-use price, but you need to include service aspects into pricing. Therefore, we of course need a shift in public purchasing from product price focus towards life cycle calculation. And I'm pretty sure that we have an interesting discussion about that on how to include these service aspects into public procurement. Europe needs to accept that producing these goods locally in a local European backbone is a strategic asset. A global market is a fine idea, but we see how easy these supply chains can break. And then it comes to the more my remit. As you may have seen, I'm the chair of Technical Committee 205, non-active medical devices. So some parts of the standardization, especially EN 14683, falls into the remit of my standardization committee. The standards for PPE and medical devices have, of course, to include aspects of circular economy. Some of them already do that. Environmental aspects is a standard agenda point when it comes to drafting standardization documents. And especially with the COVID-19 momentum, we can change standardization, because make no mistake, standardization does not discriminate. It wasn't the purpose of 14683 to exclude reusable products, but standardization is always industry policy as well. So as no one ever thought that masks and surgical hoods could become reusable products again. I mean, most of us knew reusable products only from the seasons of emergency room. But because nobody thought this could be a reusable product, single-use manufacturers, of course, did not raise the respective questions when it came to the standardization. But I'm pretty sure that COVID-19 will give standardization of especially 14683 a new momentum. But this will require SME involvement. This will require involvement of companies who are willing to manufacture reusable products. But most important, it is not only about standardization, it is about bringing the idea of reusable and circular economy back into people's minds and everyday actions. And being a textile service person myself, I see that a lot of reusable thinking has been taken away by the, let's say, aspects of slimming process lines, and it's very hard, and it needs a lot of communication to bring back the reusable idea into purchasing processes, into activity, and into people's acceptance and requirements. So that is about just the start of bringing our discussion a first spin. And Andreas, I'm open for every question. Thank you.
Thank you, Sven, for that. That was quite interesting as well. As I said before, I will, after the 3 presentations, I would like to give the floor to some people that raised their hands in the audience, and I will try to mention those who actually wrote something in the chat or raised their hands. I don't know if I'm in the correct order, but I would like to hear from Shaiju from TSA. Shaiju, are you there? Can you maybe unmute yourself, or colleagues can unmute you? No? Maybe we come back to Shaiju later. I also have David Matthews raised his hand. Can we hear from David Matthews?
No, we're all muted by the organizer.
Oh, well, please,
Okay.
organizer, could you unmute those people which will raise their hand, or maybe all unmute, and we try to find out if the background noises are not too much. So please, can we hear from you?
Thank you, Chairman. Just a point that Sven was making there, and I think it really reflects badly on those procuring PPE in the pandemic, that they were resorting to the cheap imports, and as has been indicated, much of which, certainly in the UK, like other member states, were not compliant. And we've made a very good, quick assessment that a reusable mask works out far cheaper than those imported that costing little. And the PPE procurers do not understand that. And there needs to be a more joined up approach to this, because something that will last 6 months is far, far cheaper, has just been demonstrated, than the cheap ones that are imported. And I've always been involved in standardization and risk assessments. And I think Sven said it, expect the unexpected. And if I just give you an example, I said to my government decades ago, there will be a 747 will fall on Parliament, the British Parliament, at Prime Minister's question time, and kill 700 MPs. That was rubbished until after 9/11. And then they started listening. So I think a lot of good points has been made, but we are wasting vast amounts of resources buying dross.
Thank you, David. I've seen you, Andrea, but I have another few people on my list, so I will give you the floor soon. I have Emilia Bratos in my list. I don't know if I say it in the right way, the name. Emilia, are you there? Can we hear you? Hello? Maybe later. Next one on my list would be Nelly from ETSA. Nelly, can you say your question or remark?
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Hello, Nelly. Yeah, we can hear you, Nelly. Hello, Nelly.
Yes. Hi there. Thank you. I'm afraid my question or my point was relating to the first part of the presentations, and I was just wondering if the Commission was thinking of publishing some of the lessons learned that everybody can share and how to say that, and use them so that the second crisis we are heading to is less painful for everybody. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Nelly, for that question. I think it's quite a relevant and interesting question. Maybe we come back to Rostislav. Rostislav, are you still there? Would you like to say something to this question raised by Nelly from ETSA?
Yes, thank you very much indeed. It would be our intention, of course, to share as widely as possible to discuss these questions first of all, to discuss, let's say, the first conclusions that we make as far as the lessons learned are with stakeholders. This is why also it would be a standing point in the PP working group. And then, of course, this would have the vocation to be published and to have it be readily available for everybody. So yes, indeed, in due time, I cannot tell you what would be the form exactly, whether it will be a communication or any other document, but yes, of course, this is the course we are taking.
That sounds very good. Thank you, Rostislav, for that, because I think that would be quite important for all the stakeholders. We have now, let's say, roughly half a year since the beginning of the crisis. So I think we all have learned quite a few lessons during this crisis. So that would be really interesting if we could actually support the Commission in bringing us our experiences from the supply chains and the markets. That would be very helpful. Next one on my list, Vasya Zemkova, if I spell the name right. Are you there, Vasya? Hello? Anyone there? Oh, coming back to maybe Shaiju or Emilia. Are you there, guys, with your questions? No, but then Andrea, you, Spaziani, you had a question. You raised your hand.
Yes, in the intervention before, the 9/11 was mentioned, and I think is absolutely a good example in two ways. One is that nobody expected something like that. Two, that there was a European, at least in Italy for sure, but in other countries as well, there was a reaction to 9/11 that was absolutely crazy, because a risk materialized and government reacted on impulse, and they start ordering PPE from the morning to the night. Tenders came out of nowhere, and requests became crazy. And obviously, we, as manufacturer, we were all happy. But even in that situation, I struggle now to see a strategy in handling a crisis like that. If tomorrow we wouldn't be far off from where we were in during 9/11. So what I'm trying to say is that the lack of strategy approach to these kind of things is still there. So we didn't learn that much from 9/11, because before there was a question of stockpile. If the expiry date was considering stockpile. My experience in 9/11 is that now public administration in different countries are realizing that the stock of filters have expired, and nobody really managed to track those filters. And now the handling of the stockpile of filters to be used in response to a crisis like that is not handled, and there is no focus. So what I'm trying to say is that the strategy vision in the PPE, because 9/11 had filters and masks, once again, a different level, obviously, but was still there, is still lacking. So government appreciate the need of these kind of products when the crisis, and then forgets. And this is very bad from a small and medium-sized business, because we cannot cope with the demand that is so wobbling. Because how can we invest and guarantee the safety of the continent if there is not strategic vision? I go back to what Sven said before. I totally agree with that.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. I think that is quite an important point when we look at the local supply chains and the purchasing, let's say, habit of public authorities. And we have seen that, I can support that. We've seen that in Germany as well, that the stockpiles were like outlasted, and we have seen like panic procurement, I would say. That wasn't really strategic and helpful from the government, and that should be something that we could address in an area of lessons learned from the COVID crisis. And that brings me back to Rostislav. I think, Rostislav, you wanted to add a comment on that, if I've seen that correctly, or was that already back before?
Thank you, Andreas. Indeed, if I may just briefly step in on 2 points which were raised, which I think I can also share a bit thoughts on my side. One is indeed about the, let's say, the preference given to the practical preference given to single-use products during the crisis procurement, and the other one is on compliance of products and the fact that we have non-compliant products which are currently on the market. So going toward first to practical preference for single-use products. In a way, I think nobody is actually contesting the argument of the total cost of ownership advantage of usable PPE. The fact that indeed a reusable product over time definitely has an advantage in terms of pricing. However, I think what we need to acknowledge is at the time, specifically February, March, April, there was a need to equip an incredibly large pool of users with equipment. So in a way, it was difficult at this time to also, let's say, share this reusable PPE. However, in a more structured procurement, let's say, looking again, in the context of the lessons learned, looking towards the future, I think indeed that's where reusable products have their rightful place when it's a more structured, planned procurement. Secondly, touching on non-compliant that may be found in the market, this is indeed a point which we've been closely working with member states, because we have seen indeed a number of fake certificates circulating around. So the market surveillance authorities, as far as we could see, have indeed intensified their cooperation. And I would also raise the point on the recommendation which I mentioned, 2020-403, which allowed under certain conditions products which are not compliant with, not manufactured according to the European standards, to enter the market. Indeed, this was a temporary measure which was aimed to stop the shortage of the market. But we are already looking, and we will be discussing together with member states as to whether this recommendation is still needed and whether there would be a need to phase out this recommendation. So yeah, just to let you know that when it comes to the fact that there might be certain non-CE mark PPE on the market, this does not necessarily mean that these products are not safe, but these might be products which are made available to certain users in the context of this recommendation. So just to flag this point. Thank you.
Thank you, Rostislav, for that. I think that is quite an interesting aspect on that, and we should work on that really, as I mentioned, on the strategic, more strategic approaches to the procurement of products. I still have in mind the question of the PPE and medical device area being of a strategic importance, which was quite obvious, which was mentioned by Daniel and Sven as well. I mean, something like this should maybe also be taken into consideration as a lesson learned, and that should fill in all the procurement processes of the member states. So yeah, that I think that is something that we should look at in the future. We have already a time delay. We have finished now with the presentations and the discussions in session 2. So, but we are also that late that we actually can't have a break. Are you all fine with that? Are the panelists of the session 3 are fine with starting now with the session, or do you guys need a break before? Any feedback on that? Okay, I just hear fine. So I would like to let's just look at the feedbacks on that. Fine for me, people saying fine for me. Okay, so we will start with session 3 then. And session 3 is the topic for session 3 is implementing circular economy aspects into standardization, which is one major point of SBS standardization. So I welcome you to the session 3 now. Topics for this discussion are repair and prepare the next generation, the textile services sector contribution to EC's recovery plan, how to design PPE products suitable for circular economy, and we will also maybe mention the topic of the so-called SUCAM documents, which we will come later to, one of the speakers. But our first speaker will be Valeria Botta from ECOS. Maybe short introduction for those who don't know her yet. Valeria, happy to have you here. Valeria is a program manager at the European Environmental Citizens Organization for Standardization called ECOS. She works at ECOS. She works on circular economy and coordinates the work on textiles and microplastics. She's an experienced public affairs professional, having worked for over 10 years in advocacy and communication in a variety of different EU policy areas. I want to welcome you, Valeria, for joining the session. We are very pleased that we have ECOS on board, and we are looking forward to your view on circular economy and aspects in our field, but also maybe looking what we can learn from other fields and circular economy. I'll give you the floor, Valeria.
Thank you very much, Andreas, and thanks for the invitation. Very happy to be here. Allora, wait, let me see if this works now with the screen. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can indeed. Thank you.
Okay, good. So as everybody said, a very timely discussion. We are here to discuss also how to retain value within a circular economy, reminding that of course this comes within a recovery time, and within this recovery time the EU has set a global target to be climate target to be net zero by 2050. And just a quick shout out to Sensenelec, because they have published standards in support of the EU Green Deal, which I think it's a very nice paper, if you haven't read it, on how standards can indeed support this transition to another, let's say, another paradigm. And many governments are acting on determined to act on those lines, and hopefully the recovery will indeed go into this direction. So what we are here to discuss today is indeed introduce a circular economy principle in standards and support sustainable business model in line with the circular economy and the Green Deal. What a lot of you have said already today was the product requirement related to materiality aspect. Oh yeah, sorry, but this you did, so I'll just keep this one, right? Sorry. Our approach to product is indeed a focus on an eco-design approach. So ECOS has worked on eco-design policy and regulation for over 20 years. And what we do there is try to define minimum requirements to improve the environmental performance throughout the life cycle of a product. And actually, we focus, I mean, the eco-design, clearly there is a very strong design part where the improvements are from the start, because so much of the impact, the environmental impact, but also so many other impacts from a product start from the design phase, which material, which production processes, etc. So we actually want to encourage value chains to develop products that are designed for circularity, and how we do that is thinking in our contribution to discussion to design for system, as Andrea was saying earlier, so for services and experience when discussing, for example, public procurement, designed for long lifetime that take into account indeed materiality aspects such as durability, reusability, repair, remanufacture. What we have focused our approach in the eco-design for energy-related product was as well to make part easily the availability of spare parts, making products easier to recycling, eliminate unnecessary and harmful material and substances. And this is of course quite striking when it comes then for the end of life part of products, where substances can migrate to the next phase. And then within that, the design for easy end of life. So just if technology is not mature enough, what can we do to not hinder the recycling process so that things get recycled, but indeed keeping in mind the waste hierarchy. So first and foremost, reuse and repair, remanufacture and recycle as a last step. As we have talked about material efficiency a bit throughout all the presentation today, but what we see is that within the circular economy debate, there is a lot of discussion on how to retain value throughout all the different circles that are within a circular economy. So how to make things with more recycled content, with more durable, how can you upgrade them, be that from a product or a software point of view? Can they be reused easily? And actually there is a lot of policy that are on the way that are looking into these materiality aspects. And of course, I mean, don't take my word for it, but there is the Sustainable Product Initiative with a consultation ongoing from the European Commission that actually pinpoints at having, oops, sorry, that went. Oh, and where did it go? Sorry. The Eco-Design Directive to be widened beyond energy-related products and to cover a number of products, including indeed textiles. This is the Commission is looking into this, pairing this up with some initiative on empowering consumer for the green transition and having substantiated environmental claims on products. And what they will be doing is indeed take the eco-design principles and hopefully expand, have hopefully an horizontal kind of guidelines that could be used for products, but also get into specific for a set of specific sectors such as textile. So, of course, just a reminder of what we mean by eco-design and energy label. These are two things that go hand in hand, with the eco-design pushing wasteful products off the market and the energy labeling providing information to consumers so that they can choose better products. So these two measures combined do clearly, and I mean, there is a quite strong track record of those two instruments combined to provide benefits for consumer as well as for the environment and society overall. What we have done at ECOS was come up with a standard that actually look into this. So look into identifying which parameters determine how easy it is to repair, reuse, upgrade these products, which is the energy related one. And indeed, the common methodology is a crucial step. Through this specific standard, there are some criteria and some methodology that could be taken as example and could be expanded possibly to other, I mean, reviewed, but possibly taken as an inspiration for other sectors. And this is a major step towards better design, waste reduction, but also, I mean, its methodology really identifies some criteria that you see written here, for example, that determine how easy it is to repair, reuse, and recycle and upgrade those products. What is interesting, and I'm trying to keep this short, of course, it has the potential to give policymakers a very powerful tool towards understanding where to intervene, which kind of provision could help extend a product life span. And what we have is that for a number of products, there is really a lot of literature that is already available, trying to look into repair and upgrade of products and how to take that on board within policy. As you know, the energy label, there is the idea of adding indeed a repair score. We at ECOS, and I'm trying to keep it brief, we are looking into expanding this kind of label so that there is a clear indication of the repairability score, the durability indicator, how much energy they consume, and the low impact on the environment. So ideally, in the future, all these things would be provided for energy-related products in a future. But what we feel is that this kind of approach could be beneficial for a number of sectors, including indeed textile. Looking forward to the discussion later, and thanks again for having me.
Thank you, Valeria, for the presentation. I think that gave us all some ideas on how we could actually implement the ideas and aspects of circularity also in our industry sector. And I think it's always good looking into other sectors and getting the ideas from what has been done there, because you don't need to reinvent the wheel always yourself, and some people are really good in bringing in new ideas from other sectors. So thank you for that, Valeria. We will have questions, I guess, coming up by the end of the session. I would now like to introduce our next speaker, who is Andrea Rechtsteiner. She is an SBS expert since 3 years. She is a degreed garment engineer and studied at the University of Applied Science in Mönchengladbach. She runs her own company and is a consultant for associations, authorities, and institutions in design and public tendering, supplier evaluation, and auditing for textile and leasing companies, particularly with regard to sustainability, with a focus on PPE garments and life cycle extensions. And she is a member of CEN working groups, CEN-TC 162, Working Group 2, Resistance to Heat and Fire of Protective Clothing, and Working Group 4, Protective Clothing Against Foul Weather, Wind and Cold. Thank you, Andrea, for being here and giving us some insights on your contribution and ideas to circular economy in PPE garments. Thank you, and you have the floor.
Thank you, Andreas. So in our last SBS PPE forum in October last year, the idea and task was born to introduce the topic of circular economy into standardization. We thought that the CEN-CENELEC PPE Sector Forum, which took place 2 weeks ago, and today in the SBS PPE Forum, would be a good place to discuss and develop the idea. The core business of textile service is the circular economy, and here in this meeting we have textile rental business in combination with PPE manufacturing. What do we do? Okay. First of all, in 2015, the European Commission launched a first circular economy action plan. All 54 actions under the plan have been delivered or are being implemented. In 2017, the EU Green Public Procurement (GPP) criteria are designed to make it easier for public authorities to purchase goods, services and works with reduced environmental impacts. The textile clothing, uniforms, workwear, PPE and the accessories are in focus. And since this year, a new guidance document of the GPP criteria for textile products and services are available. The European Green Deal is the Commission's plans to make the EU's economy sustainable, and the European Green Deal provides an action plan to boost efficient use of resources by moving a clean circular economy, restore biodiversity and cut pollution. It includes recommendations for reuse, repair and recycling. The Circular Economy Action Plan, until March this year, the Circular Economy Action Plan includes a sustainable products initiative, a particular focus on resource-intense sectors as textiles had to be established. In the new action plan, initiatives across the entire life cycle of products were announced, for example, the design and promotion of circular economy processes, promoting sustainable consumption, and the aim of ensuring that the resources remain in the economy as long as possible. So this will be achieved by a comprehensive set of measures, including applying new sustainable product framework for textiles, including developing eco-design measures to ensure that textile products are fit for circularity, as Valeria said before, tackling the presence of hazardous chemicals and empowering business and private consumers to choose sustainable textiles and have easy access to reuse and repair services. Product as service models, as well as circular materials and production processes, providing guidance to achieve high levels of separate collections of textile waste, which member states have to ensure by 2025. Regulatory measures such as extending producer responsibility. What is the situation today? We have a growing demand for sustainable PPE garments from the market, from companies, users and public tenders too. The requirements for the safety of the wearer in order to not to be injured while working are of the highest importance. The function of the garment, protection and comfort, is primarily the attribute of the fabric. Workers are requesting lighter PPE, which are more comfortable to wear and which still protects. This is the legal requirement. Please see here the PPE regulation in Annex 2. I quote, "The PPE must be as light as possible without prejudging its strength and effectiveness," quote end. So this does not always go in hand with reduced impact on the environment or the circularity. Textile fibers and fabric finishing used to achieve protection and associated environmental impact make it necessary to consider a number of points along the life cycle. For PPE, these are not necessarily the most sustainable materials for production, processing, maintenance, repair, and disposal. PPE garments can quickly become unusable depending on their use and must therefore be thrown away. Workers are requesting increasingly multifunctional garments, multi-standard garments. This is not always accompanied by lower environmental impact and makes circularity all the more difficult, and the more standards PPE is required to meet, the more difficult. So with my last slide, I would like to invite you as the experts to hold a discussion with us on how we can tackle this topic for PPE. We heard enough ideas today. PPE clothing combined with textile service is the most important thing, and what possibilities do we have to bring this topic into the standardization? In some standards, there are annexes with certification relevant information on colors. For example, arrangement of reflective stripes, roof tile seams on which liquid metal can roll off, for example. What about eco-design instructions, so that repairs can be possible? Also conceivable, perhaps a helpful document on specific repair instructions, as the SUCAM documents are. And probably a separate eco-design standard for PPE would not be a first mover move. There are already standards looking to these aspects. Like Valeria said, the EN or ISO 45554 standard. So thank you. That is the end of my presentation.
Thank you, Andrea. I think you pointed out quite an important thing with your last presentation. We have seen that a lot of us agree that circular aspects will have to be integrated into regulation and standardization. However, we are not sure yet on what is the best way to do that. You mentioned the SUCAM documents. Valeria showed us an example of an eco-design standard. And you even went further that referring to the PPE regulation, that there is not really something on integrating circular economy also into the regulation. So these will be topics for the future, and I guess also for the discussion later. But first we will have our third speaker in this session, and welcome to Thomas Leucht. Just a quick introduction of Thomas. He is an SBS expert. He is an engineer in textile chemistry and textile finishing, and has an MSc in quality management. He is an expert in the area of compound textiles, particularly with regard to coated textiles. And together with his wife, he's the founder and managing director of the accredited laboratory Weber and Leucht. And he's the standardization expert for SBS in CENTEC 248 working group for coated textiles since 3 years. Thomas, may I give you the floor? And thank you for for joining us here. Can you hear us, Thomas?
How it works. So you can hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Thank you for the introduction, Andreas. Yes, I'm working over 3 years for SBS, CENTEC 248, especially work group 4, coated fabrics and coated textiles. And at my daily business, I manage an accredited testing laboratory. And today we heard a lot about specific requirements of textiles, how to test it, and what problems we have to choose and to define right standards, especially if we talk about the community face masks based on non-wovens, and to implement other solutions. And I want to introduce the work of CENTEC 248 and its possible influence on circular economy topics. So, okay. For someone who's not really deep involved about the work of CENTEC 248, CENTEC 248 deals mainly with textile materials and products. In the foreground, in my opinion, are test methods. That's my experience as well. To define, to specify material properties, as well of requirements for textile products, especially, for example, children's clothing are a topic, and a lot of other products, as well as community face masks we heard before. a large number of supervised standards are also used for testing PPE. So we have a lot of cited references at the PPE standards for certification as well. Furthermore, methods for the declaration of fit and sizes are also an important topic of the committee. And another topic is harmful substances. So we talk about PPE, and you heard a lot about fluorocarbon chemistry and how to replace it. How can we improve the safety, doing care and maintenance of it? And that's as well a topic as microplastic. Last week there was a plenary meeting, and microplastic caused by textiles and fabrics is as well a topic. I think it's more or less at the moment a scientific topic. So yeah, we must observe, but we are not really sure what the way is about all discussions around microplastic. Yes, and if we talk about compared to other committees as well, we are talking about durable wovens as well as knitted fabrics and non-wovens. That's really important to know if we talk about testing standards. So in TC 248, we deal with all kind of standards for textiles. And if you are aware of, you must know that you cannot test a non-woven at the same standard as you can test a fabric. And that is what we have in a lot of standards, that a lot of standards are written mainly for non-wovens, not for reusable fabrics. And this is what we have to look on, because I think if we talk about eco-design and circular economy, we must ensure that we choose the right material at the first step to have a longer lifetime of the textiles. So, and my work group 4, coated fabrics, I will give you a practical example. It's not a PPE example, but it's, I think, one of the first steps we can implement eco-design criteria as well for every kind of textiles. And yeah, I'm an expert of coated textiles, and I'm aware that composite materials are often difficult to dispose of, because it's a composite material. You use a lot of plastics, different kind of plastics, different kind of fabrics, and that is as well as we talk about PPE products. So it's one of the main goal is to improve the lifetime we can use the product, and we can use the product safely. So if you talk about upholstery fabrics, it's my example EN 15618. There was no, the standard is old, it's common and an old standard, but services were not claimed. So this standard defined a textile quality of a upholstery fabric, but there was no link to services. And if we talk about textiles and we want to improve eco-design, we must have the right specification that we are able to do a laundry, a care, or a repair by a craftsman. And that's, I think, a really important focus. So what I have done, it was a revision of the standard, and I implemented important criteria to ensure that service companies can handle the product and can use a business model as well to carry it and to have a longer lifetime. So to expand the lifetime of a upholstery fabric from 5 years, as example, by professional service to 10 to 15 years. So we implemented washing criteria, we implemented soil resistance, and a lot of other things that we are able to, to optimize the lifetime of the upholstery fabric, so you can have it longer in use. And if we talk about especially of PPE standards, you must know that there is a standard that defines the general requirements. And this general requirements, it was before the EN 340. That standard was withdrawn. In this standard, there was not really much information about environmental aspects. And it was replaced 2013 by EN ISO 13688. And there is a special annex, Annex F, that deals with the topic we are talking about today. If if we talk about durability, lifetime, harmful substances, recycling, reprocessing, that's all named in the standard. It's really important. As well as packaging, white mass, transport, testing materials, and testing equipment properties. And if we talk about standardization work as experts, I think it's really important to know that we have a general requirement for environmental aspects as well, and we can use it. But I had a look about, as example, for a standard for firefighters. It was the year 2007. You know, every 5 years, normally you can use a revision. But this standard from 2007 was not revised. So we have the old EN 340 in place, and it's not the new one in kind of any environmental aspects that will help us to improve topics at circular economy. So indeed, we have a standard and we can have a look on. It's informative, but I think there is there's a lot of things we can do to optimize the sustainability and circular economy by using a standard. And this standard is cited by normally every kind of PPE certification. So that's my conclusion. I summarize once again. CEN TC 248 deals with elementary standards on textiles and textile products, and is already taking up important areas of the work around circular economy. However, many standards are several decades old. That is what we have to know. And we have a lot of standards that are completely different if we test a non-woven or fabrics that we can reuse. We can, I think we need to have at every chance we have for revision, as example, a state-of-the-art check. So is there any change at the standard? Can we improve it? Can we have better criteria to fulfill, especially the long-lasting material or reuse materials as well? Good. And EN 13688 should be given greater prominence, I think, as a guide to environmental aspects in upcoming revisions. The standard provides useful information, which could also help to shape the future certification of PPE in this area. And at the end, we need, you know, a certification by a notified body. We need checks by an accredited lab. And this work can only be done if we have the right standard in place. Last but not least, and that's my opinion, textile experts must be involved in standardization work, especially for each specific standard, and need to check what can we improve. I think there are enough opportunities in the next years. Yeah, that was my introduction. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas, for that. That was quite interesting, with a quite interesting aspect, maybe new aspect, and on working on an old standard and bringing into new aspects, which is quite interesting, I think. And we have heard this before, that different suggestions that Andrea already made. I want to hear if there is anybody who has direct questions to the panelists that we have. At that point, thank you for the 3 presentations. I can't see that there is any, but I myself would have a question and want to place this maybe with all of you guys. We have seen that, and Thomas mentioned that, and Andrea mentioned it, that sometimes the users and the procurers of PPE, they actually think they need a lot of multi-function standard PPE. We have seen that this might be a conflict, and heard from Andrea that this might be a conflict between protection of the worker, or maybe just imagined protection of the worker, and also the protection of the environment. So these are kind of ethical conflicts that we have there. So what do you guys think can we do in the regulation and in the standardization to solve those conflicts, and where do you see opportunities to do that? Maybe Thomas or Andrea, would you say something about this? I can't hear anybody.
Okay, I think, in my opinion, if we talk about multifunctional products, we need to fulfill a lot of technical requirements. And if we talk about especially care and repair of this developed fabrics and innovative products, this means that we need to have to ensure the safety during the complete process. But I'm not sure if we can say multifunctionality is bad, because I think we need to have a look about an eco-design process. So if we have a multifunctional product and we use less raw materials, less or we can recycle the multifunctional fabric as well, then we must compare it with normal or standard products that we have burning behavior only or chemical resistance only. And I'm not clear in this discussion if a multifunctional fabric can lead to safe raw materials, or if we replace a multifunctional fabric, if we need more raw materials and more harmful substances because we have more textiles in the market. I'm not sure about it, because I think that we need to have a look about an eco-design process, and especially about the service process behind, because the service process is at the end the things that ensures environmental friendly aspects.
Yeah, I think that is something that you mentioned in the last sentence. I mean, brings us back to the number of cycles that the PPE can be used, and that is also dependent on the design of the PPE. So I think that is something Andrea would like to say something about. Andrea?
Yes, so we have to talk about the biggest hurdles for a long service life and life cycle, and what are the hurdles and what are the problems. First of all, a lot of employers and companies, there is the risk assessment missing by the employer, and so most of the employers choose the wrong textiles for their required activity. And this is mainly the competence of the purchasing person at the employer's side, or the sales at the textile service or manufacturers. So the use of the multifunctional, better multi-standard fabrics, many standards combined in one item of clothing result in a for example, all-weather tire among the PPE items. It can do everything but nothing right. And using a specialist as a garment is a better choice after a risk assessment, protecting against the main risk at first. So what are the results of a multi-standard fabric? The user is weighted in safety by multi-standard PPE, and no longer pays attention, and the clothing wears out faster. The fabrics are becoming thinner and softer as comfort becomes a second after safety. The clothing wears out faster again. In third place, the optics plays a very important role at PPE. The clothing should be more fashionable and sportier look, and many dividing and complicated seams and accessories such as sewn-in reflective stripes, for example, meanwhile prevent replacement or repair. The garment only achieve 20 to 30 washing cycles and are expensive to lease, and repairs are no longer possible. So you have to buy a new one. And I think the idea to have a sustainable standard, sustainable PPE standard. I think it's quite smart, and probably we have additional standard with A++ for a PPE textile or PPE item that shows that this PPE item is more sustainable than the others and can survive longer time in the textile service.
Thank you for that, Andrea. I just check if there is any questions. Let me just check that. Oh yes, I think I see that Henk van Houten, you would like to have the floor if I understand that correctly. Henk, are you there?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning, Henk. Welcome.
You hear me? Okay. Yeah, I'm just want to mention a few points as chair of the PPE sector forum at Senelec. It has been mentioned already a couple of times. Indeed, the topic of sustainability has come or has been on the agenda on the initiative of Andreas and Sebastiano and Andrea. What we're planning now is to organize sometime early next year a workshop on sustainability for PPE. Actually, we set up a small group to prepare that, and we have our first meeting planned for next week. Just with the aim to bring together interested stakeholders, one, and second, also give the opportunity to listen and learn from other sectors where they have already done things. And with this, I would certainly want to invite Valeria, for instance, to participate in that, because I think you can bring very interesting insights and more details about what's happening already in other sectors. So that we can learn from others and then see what we can implement short term, longer term, as Andrea mentioned, for instance, guidance for TCs on how to deal with specific topics, maybe guidance on how to deal with certain things in SUCAM documents and so on. So just bring a number of people together to discuss in a very open, out of the box maybe thinking way, so that we can see what we can do towards the future. I think that's an important one, and I wanted to mention that. And maybe another one that I want to mention, that's maybe more related to the very beginning of the sessions. I have suggested to CCMC to bring or to organize maybe also in the same system of a workshop, people from the medical devices and the PPE sector. For the simple reason, some of you know who my employer is. So I've been very much involved in certification issues and the confusion between medical masks and PPE masks. And then now we have this third group, the community face masks. And if I'm looking more, and we have the same in gloves and in garments, if I look at the standards, I mean, there's no line. They all have their own direction. They're talking about more or less the same product maybe, but there's no collaboration or not enough. So maybe it's time, and it's the same for legislation, by the way. So maybe it's time to sit together and see, okay, how can we better coordinate the work so that it's maybe easier, first of all, to have products that are compliant with medical and PPE legislation on the one hand, but also for the user, how can it be clearer what the function is of this product and the other, and so on. So that was a suggestion I made to CCMC already some time ago, also to have a look at that and bring the stakeholders from those two sectors together. So I think we have a lot of work to do. So thank you for organizing the forum. It was interesting to listen. And with the sector forum, we're certainly ready to pick up several of the points and work on those to further develop. So thanks for that.
Oh, thank you, Henk. That is really nice to hear. For those who don't know Henk, I think he mentioned he's the convener of the Senelec PPE Sector Forum. And Henk, we have had a few discussions in the last Sector Forum on that as well. And it is interesting to hear that we can sort of come up with new thinking, new ideas, and trying to work on these topics. And that is really, I'm really thankful for that, Henk. Thank you very much. I have another question which was placed in the chat from Sabine Anton Katzenbach to Valeria, actually. She's saying there are many company initiatives for eco and sustainable design, and if the standard EN 45554 take these information into account. I think, as if I understand you correctly, Valeria, this was more about energy-related products and household goods, but maybe you can clarify this and answer this question.
Yes, thanks, Sabine, for your question. Indeed, so the EN 45554 is specifically for energy-related product. It stems from a standardization request from the European Commission within the Eco-Design Directives that indeed for now covers energy-related products. So household item, washing machine, dryer, dishwasher, lights, etc., etc. There is a long list of products that are covered by the Eco-Design. What actually it does is that within identifying all these parameters, then it kind of makes it easy with a methodology to aggregate all these criteria into one repairability score, which actually gives the consumer, B2B, B2C, however this can be used, more information on the actual, some circular economy aspect of this product, which for now, of course, they are, as I was saying, these. So for example, as of 2021, some of the products that I was saying earlier, so TV, monitors, fridge and washing machine, and etc., they will have to meet minimum requirement on repairability, for example. And this aims to extend the lifetime of a product, because we know that the easiest part of taking down the environmental impact of a product is extending the lifetime. So there are indeed a lot of initiatives that are out there. The standard is related to energy-related products only, but as it provides kind of a general framework on how to define how it is easy to repair, recycle, upgrade some different products with a methodology, and then has a methodology to aggregate all these different criteria. This is something that could be easily thought for other sectors as well. If you have any follow-up question, happy to take them offline as well.
Thank you, Valeria, for that clarification. I think this is very helpful, and that's what was actually what we thought of. This could be kind of not kind of a role model, but kind of having an idea on how we could do a similar thing for the PPE and textile care industry, which we are in, and that I think will be followed up, as we heard from Henk, in trying to bring stakeholders together to sort of have an idea on how can we work in standardization on that, on eco-design of PPE and medical devices, as we heard. And I think that would be quite helpful. I'm looking to the chat. I can't see that there is any question, but maybe those people who have any question, and you're welcome to join, not only for the last session but also for the other session. If you have any questions, we will still be open to take some and to discuss these issues. At the moment, I don't see some, but I have a question. Another question I would like to ask. I mean, we are still discussing and talking about PPE, which falls under the regulation and which falls under the conformity assessment. Therefore, often repair, the standards and the conformity assessments don't allow for repair of PPE at the moment. And some, and I hope I'm not addressing some of the PPE producers here, but some garment producers even don't design things like design PPE which is actually repairable. And also what we are missing is actually that the notified bodies in their conformity assessment can actually assess a repaired garment or a garment that is due to be repaired. Maybe a question to Thomas. Do you see any chance on how to change this situation of the sort of conformity assessment also blocking any changes to the repair part of the PPE products?
Yes. If you talk about conformity assessment, normally you need a standard putting in place that regulates this field, and that's the main problem of notified bodies, because they have no maintenance or definitions around that they can check the repairability. And I think that is what I explained before. We need to change the standard, and if we have changed the standard, then a notified body can work with. But at the moment, you have no base to test and to handle repairability. And that is that a lot of notified bodies don't want to give a green light in this point. Because they must be safe within the decisions if they have certified a product and so on. Yes, and that was my outcome of my presentation, that we need to have a look about the standard, and we need to use criteria like defined in EN 13688, because as a notified body, you need a paper you can work with.
Thank you for that, Thomas. I think that shows how much work is quite in front of us for trying to bring in all these aspects of circular economy and all the specific aspects of reusability, repairability, recyclability into this complete system of regulation, conformity assessment, standardization. This will be quite some work to do, and I guess it won't be done within a few months if I see the things that we have discussed here. Maybe is Rostislav still there in the group? Is it? Yeah. It's a bit difficult. Background noise is there, but yeah, I heard you. I mean, I was still wondering. As I mentioned, we have the system of PPE and standards, and we had the standardization request recently for the standards to be harmonized with the new regulation. We have, on the other hand, the COVID crisis, which puts us under pressure for PPE products and new PPE products, and especially, as we heard today, for reusable PPE products. So what is your view on how this whole system of regulation standardization could integrate this, not only looking into single or the SEN working groups that are responsible for single standards on PPE, but what would your be approach in this complete regulation standardization area, and how to tackle this in this complex situation for PPE?
Thank you for this question. Indeed, I hope you can hear me better now. Apologies, my line is a bit cutting down. So indeed, as you said a bit earlier, there is indeed a lot of areas that require this to work on, and indeed there's a lot of various aspects to take into consideration. What we're seeing at the moment indeed is, and what we would say that indeed it's important to focus the efforts indeed on the side of the standardization. We do see a lot of potential in, of course, standards taking up on those elements and those aspects. And on this front, actually, as already mentioned by Catherine in her presentation, the PPE standardization request actually has received a positive opinion by the Committee of Standards. So the process of its adoption by the Commission is on the way, and it should shortly be sent to SEN. And of course, as already discussed, this is a very live document. The intention is to have this the list of standards in the standardization request very regularly updated to reflect the evolutions, the situation in the standardization side. When it comes to the PPE regulation itself, we do consider this, as far as we could see for the moment, that the regulation being technologically neutral, we don't necessarily spot any particular regulatory barriers in the regulation as such, which would prevent the further uptake of those aspects. Of course, there could be indeed, as already mentioned, there were other horizontal pieces of European legislation where those sustainability, reusability aspects could be tackled in one way or another. So indeed, from our side, also we are trying to liaise and keep in touch with all the colleagues following those specific and responsible for pushing forward those specific pieces of legislation, so as to indeed have an overreaching approach towards these topics.
Thank you for this, Rostislav. Yeah, I think that the issue of having on the one side quite a lot of documents already on a horizontal level, and on the other hand, the industries having their regulations. That is something I think that maybe the Commission should look at in the future on how to integrate that into each other, because what we've seen is, okay, we have all the measures or the strategies in papers from the Commission, from Senelec and so on. But what we don't have at the moment is that we see that put into practice into the products. That's because we don't have it in the standards, and we don't have it in our conformity assessment, and so on and so on. And I think we are not the only industry that is tackling this issue. So that will be something, and that was the point I was trying to focus on. That is something that makes it difficult for industries, that we only have horizontal documents to refer to and nothing specific for our industry. And that is something we need to work on, I think, together with all stakeholders and also with the Commission and Senelec, if I may say so.
Absolutely, indeed. I agree with you, and that this is a point we have the intention to keep up, and we hear very well the calls to have this, let's say, more streamlined approach, more integrated approach. And yes, reflections are going on this. Also, you know, PPE regulation as such came into force relatively recently. So also these are aspects which we are taking into consideration as far as its effectiveness is concerned. Other aspects might also be popping up. So indeed, as always, you know, there is a constant reflection as to how effective the legislation is. So indeed, I cannot say that there would be necessarily a revision of the legislation soon enough, but if need be, this could of course also be on the table if this proves to be the most effective way forward. So.
Okay, thank you for that, Rostislav. I want to hear from the audience if there is any more questions before we try to wrap up the meeting, the workshop. Maybe to my colleagues from SME Safety, are there any more questions, any more comments? coming up? I know, Sebastiano, you have connecting problems.
Yes, Andreas, thank you also for taking care and going on with the conclusions. Maybe also talking to a person from ISTM, Sarah Gobbi, who mentioned that they are doing standards for circularity in the PPE sector. Maybe she can just say a few words. I think it might be useful information for all of us.
Yeah, sure. Is she? Can we hear? No? Can we hear her?
Perhaps she needs to be given the mic by Rosanna.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful.
Okay.
Hello.
Yeah. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Sebastiano. Yes, I am representing ASTM International. As you may know, this is a global developer of standards based in the United States, and we have an office here in Brussels. ASTM produced standard on PPE, and they were very similarly to what SAN and ISO did during the pandemic. They were released for free access to the public, and currently, following many requests that we received from the industry, we are currently developing new standards to include elements of reusability and cleaning of PPEs and also sustainability. So this is something that is currently ongoing. Our committees are open to anyone with an interest, and I think it would be nice to coordinate more on this issue. And if you are interested in one of the next opportunity, I could ask one of our experts to provide a more detailed update on this.
Thank you, Sarah, for this. This is great to hear, and maybe I'd like to forward this to Henk, because I think that will be something that might be taken into consideration also for the work of the Senelec PPE Sector Forum. Henk, do you want to say something on that?
Yes, thank you, Andreas. And indeed, I was thinking the same. We should have a talk with Sarah on what ASTM is doing, and certainly invite them to the workshop and have them present what they are doing, so that again, we don't have to reinvent the hot water or the wheel or whatever you want to reinvent. We don't want to do that. Let's coordinate and use what's available and done by others, and that's also the best way to move forward faster. So yes, thanks for that, and we'll be in touch, Sarah.
Great, thanks. This is great.
Thank you for that, Henk, and also Sarah. That's good to hear that things that are already discussed or developed can be taken to other stakeholders as well. I think that is very valid and helps us maybe proceeding more quickly with what we need in these areas. I see also in the chat. Oh, Valeria, are you leaving or? Oh no, you're taking it, raising your hand. Sorry.
No, it's my hand raised.
Yeah. Okay. I got you. I have another question before, and it's from Edwin Mars, and it says, in my experience, some PPE protects, and after its protection, it can't be used anymore. Example, the standard regarding welding textile protects against droplets, but in a lot of cases, after washing, a hole appears after washing because the textile is damaged. This doesn't happen when one uses an aramid fiber. Why does the standard allow holes to appear due to welding droplets? This is a very, very specific question about a standard. I don't know if we have any expert on the floor of any, if any of the experts can say something about that, Is there anyone in the audience who can say something? Andrea, you raises your hand. Can you say something about that?
I could say something about it, but I think that would be a question for Dave Matthews.
Dave, do we still have you on board?
Yes, Andreas, I'm here. Thanks, Andrea. Yeah, I mean, all of these standards, EN ISO presently, EN ISO 11611 is the welder standard, and it's presently under revision. We found out following publication that certain garments, due to UV, in a very short period of time of use, probably 2 weeks, were no longer compliant. So we've got Dr. Jan Beringer of Hohenstein leading that project, and Jan is doing very well, and we're waiting for presentations on that to our meetings, but of course all these meetings are virtual. Just a couple of points, Chair, if I can. I'll shut the door.
Yeah, sure.
On the cleaning and maintenance and SUCAMs that was generally referred to, I'm involved with the Americans on the NFPA, and we have a standard for cleaning, maintenance and repair. In ISO, we have a draft international standard for heat and flame. That's for maintenance. And we have a British standard. And the only reason we had a British standard is because there's no European standard. And as Andrea knows, at TC162 Working Group 2, twice I proposed that we have a standard in Europe, and it was rejected by the major manufacturers. And if we could get people like Valeria from ECOS on that, the present standards, which we do deal a little bit on circularity and the environment, could certainly assist on that. But a final point, if I may, almost everybody on this call today is a knowledgeable person on the PPE, on the standardization. And on all of my many SEN and ISO committees, we struggled to get participants because their day job is not standardization. But we tried through SEN CMC to get funding for the notified bodies because we require to do a lot of round-robin trials. And we could do a lot of this work that's been discussed today if we had a fund that gave some support to the notified bodies to get involved in round-robin trials. Because it is difficult getting people to participate, Andrea. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Dave. That was quite a good input you gave us there, and also to the Commission. I think that is something we should think about and should consider. I don't know if Katerina, are you still there? If you want to say something about that, or Rostislav? No, can't hear him. Well, if there is no reply on that, I would like to give the floor to Valeria, who raised her hand. Also, she wanted to say something.
Yes, actually, quite a small, just for your information. So indeed, within the latest technical committee on Textile 248, there was the proposal of set up also a circular economy for textile working group. So what Enk was saying with the medical device and PPE, I mean, let's keep all these kind of initiatives in mind so that they all go into the same direction for coherence. Thanks.
Yeah, that's quite a good remark. I think we have so many working groups and also stakeholders on that that we always need to try to find a way of better communication. There's something that Sven said before. More communication is needed on that. So I agree completely with you, Valeria, on that, and integrating all stakeholders. And we are also happy to have ECOS in this working groups, because they can give us some ideas from other industries, which of the things that have been developed already. Okay, if maybe back to Sebastiano, are there any more questions? Because I can't see them here on my screen.
Let me check. No, I don't think we have.
Okay.
Just a couple of comments to say that the discussion was interesting. So I think we are happy with that.
Okay, thank you for that, Sebastian. We were supposed to do the closing remarks together, but due to your connection, I will try to do it for both of us. Thank you all, the panelists and also the participants for all your input and for the presentations and for the interesting discussions we had. I tried to wrap up a few things which I got. I mean, not saying that I'm complete with that, but trying to wrap up a few things. I think the discussion has shown that it is now, after all the planning and the strategic documents, it is now time to implement these ideas into legislation, into standardization in specific industries, namely in our the PPE and textile care industry, and also medical devices. We've learned that there are good examples from other industry, and we have also learned that that we already have standards that might be revised and aspects of circularity or eco-design integrated. We need the support of the legislators and standardization makers on that. And I remind you of what Dave said. We need experts working in the standardization groups to make this happen, to actually implement these circular economy aspects. What I like to stress is that the SMEs need to be involved into that, and because if you want to roll out circular economy in our industry, it is quite a lot is about the products in use. That, I mean, when you have reusable products, most of those who are reprocessing it are SMEs, so you need to get them involved into this discussion. We also seen in the second session that we need a local supply chain, not only for circular economy, but also to make Europe more independent in times of crisis. And then I would like to add on this, a logical thought is that PPE and medical devices are actually strategically important for Europe, and that we, in my view, and that we have heard that today, that we need a strategic vision of the EU regarding PPE, and that the Commission should see and regard the PPE and medical device industry as a strategic sector to reduce the dependency of global supply chains. And also I wanted to say that this discussion has shown that this will quite be a challenge for the next few months, if not years, to integrate all these aspects into legislation and standardization, and that we need also a balance between costs and crisis needs. That was something that came from Sebastiano. I agree with that as well. That is a lesson that we learned from the crisis, and that we should take into consideration into preparing for future crises. All in all, I think we need new thinking and new ideas into standardization. We have seen that today, and I'm looking forward to see that happen together with the Commission and Senelec and the working groups that are working in PPE and medical devices. Yes, I would like to invite all the people in the audience to bring in their thoughts in the further discussions and in the events that have been mentioned as well. And I think we can all say that we need to make it easy for SMEs and for the companies to implement all these ideas into the products that work for them, for the users as well, and for protection of the workers. including reusability, recyclability, and repairability. So thank you for that. Is there any other comment on that? I can see that, let me just check. Oh yeah, there is one more. Sorry, my device is a bit slow. Yes, Sebastiano is saying thank you for all participating. He says we are circulating an event report as soon as possible to all participants in order to capture the main findings and conclusions. Some of them I have mentioned already. So this is the place for me and time for me now to thank you all participating in this event. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to SBS for making this possible. And I hope you enjoyed our discussions, and I wish you a good day today. And remember, please be always invited to discuss with us and give your input on the things we discussed today. Thank you very much, and goodbye to all of you.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye-bye.